Hey guys, great to see you. Joe here. Welcome to another video and thank you very much indeed for joining me. So I just wanted to cover a couple of quick topics in this video. And one of them is how we can kind of refine our blues rhythm playing. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking about these type of things in the past, and there's lots and lots of videos, so if you haven't checked some of my previous videos, you might like to do that. Now, we're going to take a look at a simple blues in E. Okay, so that means just that we have an E, an A, and a B7 chord, generally speaking, okay? And as I say, if you followed any of my previous lessons, then you'll be very familiar with all of this kind of thing. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm just going to presume that you have some basic knowledge here. So one of the first blues we all tend to learn is based around this kind of 2/4 thing. And we play like that, and we go to RA. Back to RE as a rule, and then usually to RB or B7 in this case, and to the A perhaps, not always but most times, and then kind of E again, home base. Yeah, now there are many different variations on that kind of thing, as I'm sure you're all aware. But I don't really want to go into too much of that detail because, as I say, it's already been covered many times in my previous videos. But what I wanted to kind of try and explain to you today is that the difference which separates somebody who's very good on the guitar and somebody who's perhaps, say, average or maybe intermediate or something like that, the differences are not as big as you might think. They're generally relating to the details, and they're very subtle differences. So as I just played this E blues here, I kind of played it in a style that maybe a beginner or an intermediate player might play it, you know, just something like that. There's no palm muting, and it's just ringing out, and it still sounds good. That's the nice thing about a lot of blues stuff. But what we've realized very quickly is that straight away, if we palm mute the sound, it immediately sounds better. And I've talked about this many times again, so it's something I'm not really going to go into. We just lay this palm on the strings and suddenly it sounds a little different because it's not ringing out, yeah? And so it has a tendency to sound a little bit more bluesy, playing it that way. So that's something that you already, I'm sure you all know about. Now, I've been listening to a lot of Robert Johnson over the years, and I tend to have periods when I listen to it more than others, like we all do, I suppose, with different artists. And I've had one of those periods again where I've been listening to his style a lot, and it's pretty evident that he uses a pick on his thumb, because the sound he gets is a pretty hard sound. But what I discovered is that if you aim for an approximation of what he is doing, you're going to have yourself a very groovy blues. It's something that's well worth spending some time with, and given that you already know the basics, it's worth working on those details that I'm talking about, which kind of separate, you know, the different levels of guitarist. So that's what I'm going to talk about just briefly right now, okay? So let's take this E blues that I'm talking about. Now, like I say, if we have this dampening thing here, that's one way we can dampen, okay? And it's a very effective way. Now, what I've noticed, the only way you can get like a kind of sound approaching what he does without a thumb pick on the right hand is what I do is I angle my thumb. So generally speaking, I'll be like that. You know, this right hand here, thumb will be flat on the guitar. But I kind of alter the whole kind of, if you see, my wrist raises up. So it's not a kind of style which is going to be ergonomically good for you to be doing for long periods of time. Well, it certainly isn't for me because I have issues there. But it's the only way to kind of try and get this very hard sound that he gets, which is like a... Now, what I like about this technique is that he doesn't rely on palm muting at all. The actual thumb of the right hand is doing all the dampening. So what's happening is it's playing the notes, but then very quickly going back onto the strings that I'm playing, okay? And so it creates a different style of dampening. So we have more of a... into your B, and whatever Robert Johnson turnaround you want to play. Just be like a standard turnaround. That's not really the issue. So you can see, yeah, by bringing this thumb, raising the wrist a little bit and playing towards the bridge and using this new style of dampening, it's very interesting because it's very difficult to do with palm muting. Okay, so this is one of, in a sense, something that I've picked up on was one of his styles of playing. So as I say, we've got this. Listen to his recordings, you'll get the feel of what I mean by that. It can sound really good and really groovy if you kind of get it as you want it, with the dampening happening. So that is something well worth working on. It's not particularly difficult. But again, it wasn't that specifically that I wanted to show you, but that is certainly an element well worth working on. So spend a little bit of time just doing it slowly. In a moment I'll zoom in so you can see more closely the hand positionings and what's happening. It's not very complex, but just so you can see a little bit more clearly. Before we do that, however, we've got to make sure we've got that E blues down to that kind of standard, yeah? At least that's the idea. That's what we're aiming for. It may take some time, but it's well worth spending the time if this is something that interests you. So we've got this. Now, when you're playing that rhythm, it can be very hard to do anything else with the other fingers. It doesn't feel very instinctive. They don't really want to do much. And of course, this is where the real skill comes in, because it's when you start using these other fingers that we get this kind of almost like back and forth conversation. We've got something happening in the bass, like a piano left hand, and then something in the top end, which is akin to like a right hand on a piano. Even if it's very simple, it can sound very effective. So what we're looking to do is, and we're only using the thumb of the right hand and our index finger, okay, that's all we're using for this kind of style. Not that we have to, but this is just something that I'm showing you. By all means experiment, that's what it's about. So we got this, and what we've got to do is we've got to try and talk this index finger into moving, and it can just play this E string here. So if we can get it to do that, at first it won't be happening in the places where you want it to happen. Okay, so this is what you need to work on. So it might be, first step might be just trying to get it to do anything. It's going to be this kind of thing, and the bass will stop when you try to add it and things like that. But if you persevere, it will start to happen. Okay, so you keep your bass steady and the style that we talked about, and we try and get this in from time to time. Then our turn around. It can be anything, the turn around, it doesn't really matter. If you're interested in this one, it's Sweet Home Chicago, Turn Around. I've done a lesson on it, yeah? Okay, and so once you've got that, you've actually made a really big breakthrough, because it's like a drummer trying to do different things with his hands and his feet and stuff. Doesn't matter about the tempo. It's more about the placement and where that E note falls, as you will discover as you practice it. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so first, take a look at the kind of thumb on the right hand, yeah? So as you can see, the kind of angles and the shapes and things like that. And what you're basically looking to do without playing the left hand, just to show you, is now it doesn't sound like the whole thing is dampening, but combined when you're playing this, it is dampened. Okay, so the first step is to get that tone, which is the, now you can see the left hand combined there, yeah? So you can see how that sound is being killed. Yeah? Okay, so then obviously, like we said, the next step, once you've got your rhythm nice and solid, we're going to start trying to add this E with the right hand. Now we can do that with the index or the middle. So it's down for you to kind of experiment and see what works for you. There are no really hard and fast rules with this type of thing. So start basic, then whatever turnaround we want to play, like I say. Now there are variations on that. Okay, but we need to be comfortable with that first, because just that by itself can sound very groovy. And then whatever turnaround we have. But there are also, once you can do this thing with the E string, you've really broken a barrier with your playing. It's a difficult thing to be able to do. It sounds very simple, but you may find it a bit of a challenge, and that is normal. But once you've accomplished it, there's a real sense of achievement. This G string, okay, we can use prior to the E string. So we would have like a, so we're going twice open, and then we're hammering on to the third string first fret and playing the E. Now that's obviously quite difficult while you're trying to play this. We could also play, which is on this second fret, the G string and the D string, followed by the same little move we played on the G string, hammering onto the first and then open. So we got, or just, so hopefully that gives you some ideas as to how you can refine your blues and to pay attention, in a sense, when we're listening to stuff, because these differences are so subtle sometimes that it can be difficult to hear what's happening. And so it's important to be a good listener, and then you'll pick up a lot more things when you just really do listen to some of this stuff. And as ever, you know, I often recommend taking a listen to different types of music, but it's well worth listening to the Robert Johnson if you haven't already. You know, he was certainly unique in his style of play and everything else. And so I hope that in some small way that has helped you. And believe me, if you can spend the time practicing those simple concepts, if it's not something you can do already, then it's a very valuable skill to have, because you're learning to kind of play in a syncopated fashion by, you know, keeping one rhythm with your thumb and almost another with your finger. And as I say, it sounds a lot simpler than what it actually is. So I do hope that that helps you guys. It's given me many, many hours of fun over the years just playing around with these kind of ideas. Because as I say, it's those subtleties which separate, you know, the different levels of playing. So anyway, enough said, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, perhaps you could click on the like or the subscribe. And for anybody who's interested in helping me continue on make these lessons, then there's a link down to my Patreon page down below where you can do that. You can help support me continue on bringing these lessons to everybody. So I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to watch, and enjoy.